King Solomon, son of David, ascended the throne of Israel, chosen by God to lead a nation at its zenith. But how did this young king, inheriting immense power, gain a wisdom so profound it would become legendary? The answer lies in a pivotal divine encounter that would define his reign. Solomon's inheritance was vast, a united kingdom forged by his father, David, stretching from the Euphrates to the border of Egypt. With this unprecedented peace came immense responsibility. He was tasked with governing God's chosen people, a demanding role that required not just strength, but an extraordinary depth of understanding. The weight of this crown, and the expectation of righteous rule over such a great people, pressed upon his young shoulders. How would he navigate the complexities of justice and leadership without his father's seasoned experience? The future of Israel depended on his first, foundational steps. In the early days of his reign, Solomon journeyed to Gibeon, a significant high place where he offered 1,000 burnt offerings to the Lord. It was there, amidst the solemnity of his devotion, that God appeared to him in a dream. The divine presence filled the night, and a voice, clear and resonant, spoke to Solomon. "Ask for whatever you want me to give you." This was no ordinary question. It was an open invitation, a boundless offer from the Creator of the universe. What desire would rise to the surface of a young king's heart when granted such an unparalleled opportunity? Solomon's response was not what many might expect from a king with limitless potential. He did not ask for long life, nor for riches, nor for the death of his enemies. Instead, acknowledging his youth and the immensity of the task, he prayed to God, "Give your servant an understanding heart to judge your people, that I may discern between good and evil. For who is able to govern this great people of yours?" 1 Kings chapter 3, verse 9. This was a plea not for personal gain, but for the divine wisdom necessary to serve God's people with justice and righteousness. His desire was not for power, but for profound discernment. God was greatly pleased with Solomon's selfless request. Because he had asked for an understanding heart to administer justice, and not for worldly desires, God granted him unparalleled wisdom, a wisdom so vast that no one before or after him would possess its equal. But the divine generosity did not stop there. In addition to wisdom, God promised him riches, honor, and a long life, saying, "I will give you what you have not asked for, both wealth and honor, so that in your lifetime you will have no equal among kings. And if you walk in obedience to me and keep my decrees and commands as David your father did, I will give you a long life." 1 Kings chapter 3, verses 10 to 14. A magnificent blessing, yet profoundly conditional. Upon awakening, Solomon understood the immense magnitude of the gift bestowed upon him. He had been anointed with a divine discernment unlike any other, a wisdom meant to serve justice and truth for all Israel. This was not inherent genius, but a direct endowment from God, purposed for righteous governance. The stage was now set. This extraordinary wisdom, freshly received, would soon be put to its ultimate harrowing test, a test that would solidify his legacy and become one of the most famous judgments in history. In the shadow of King Solomon's burgeoning palace, far from the grandeur of cedar and gold, lay the unadorned dwellings of Jerusalem's common people. It was in one such humble single-room house, dark and close, that two women resided. They were not of high birth or great means, but lived a life dictated by the daily rhythms of survival in ancient Israel. Both had recently experienced the profound miracle of childbirth, a blessing that often brought immense joy, yet for them it carried a quiet, almost foreboding weight. Their vulnerable status in society meant their lives were perpetually exposed to the unpredictable currents of fortune, good or ill. Within the confines of their shared dwelling, a testament to their limited resources, the two women navigated the tender, exhausting early days of motherhood. Their infants, born within a span of just a few days, lay nestled beside them, two tiny beacons of life in the close quarters. This shared experience of new life, however, did not forge a bond of sisterhood. Rather, it created an intimate yet isolated world. Crucially, there were no other adults, no family, no neighbors, to share their immediate space, to witness the quiet moments of their lives. This absence of external eyes would soon prove to be a tragic and pivotal detail in a story that would demand unprecedented wisdom. Then, one night, the fragile peace of their shared existence shattered. Exhaustion, a constant companion for new mothers, weighed heavily. In the profound darkness of the room, one of the women, deep in a sleep brought on by fatigue, unknowingly rolled over onto her infant. The tiny, vulnerable life, unable to cry out, was silently smothered. It was an accident of unimaginable horror, a mother's worst nightmare brought to a devastating reality. The child, vibrant just hours before, now lay still and cold, a silent testament to the fragility of life and the unforeseen cruelties of fate. The mother, upon waking to the chilling discovery of her dead child, was gripped not only by grief but by a desperate, primal fear of being left barren. In that dark, desolate hour, a terrible thought, born of despair and cunning, took hold. She rose stealthily, her movements furtive in the moonless night. Driven by a twisted impulse to reclaim what she had lost, she crept to where the other woman and her living infant slept soundly. With a heart pounding and a mixture of sorrow and illicit desire, she exchanged the dead child from her side with the living child of her unsuspecting housemate. Her own lifeless infant was then placed next to the sleeping mother, a silent, horrifying act of deception that would soon ignite an inferno of accusation. As the first faint light of dawn filtered into the cramped dwelling, the second mother awoke, her body aching, ready to nurse her child. She reached for her baby, but her touch met with an unnatural stillness, a coldness that sent a jolt of terror through her. Her heart seized as she discovered the infant unresponsive, lifeless. Grief, sharp and sudden, threatened to overwhelm her, but as her eyes adjusted to the pale light, a chilling detail emerged. Upon closer, agonizing inspection, she realized with dawning horror. The dead child beside her was not her son. The features, the shape, they were unfamiliar. A terrible, sickening realization began to form, a dawning horror that transcended mere loss. The revelation erupted into an anguished cry, piercing the morning quiet. The true mother, her heart now a cauldron of terror and fury, immediately turned to confront the other woman. "My child is the living one," she wailed, her voice raw with accusation and maternal instinct. "And your child, the dead one, is the one you bore." Her words were not merely a claim of possession, but a desperate assertion of truth, a primal cry against the unspeakable crime committed in the night. The living infant, now clutched protectively to her breast, was the undeniable proof. Yet how could she prove the swap that had occurred in the deepest darkness? But the false mother, hardened by desperation and the cunning of her deceit, met the accusation with a vehement denial. Her voice, though perhaps trembling, was resolute. "No," she retorted, her words laced with escalating anger. "The living child is mine, and the dead child is yours." She painted a picture of righteous indignation, skillfully deflecting the blame and asserting her own fabricated claim. The argument raged, a desperate war of words fueled by conflicting griefs and a singular, living prize. Each woman held steadfast to her version of the truth, creating an impenetrable wall of accusation and counter-accusation. The quarrel escalated, filling the small dwelling with the bitter sounds of distraught women. Each mother clung fiercely to her claim, neither willing to yield. The situation quickly became an unsolvable riddle, a profound judicial impasse. There were no witnesses to the night's dark exchange, no third party to corroborate either story, no physical evidence that could definitively prove ownership. How could the truth be uncovered when the only testimonies were diametrically opposed, born of such intense emotion and, in one case, profound deception? The sheer impossibility of resolving this dispute through conventional means highlighted a desperate need for a wisdom far beyond human understanding. With their furious argument leading to an irresolvable deadlock and no one else to arbitrate their profound dispute, the two women had but one recourse: to seek royal justice. Their desperate journey led them from their humble dwelling through the bustling, sun-drenched streets of Jerusalem towards the imposing gates of the king's palace. Their weariness was palpable, but beneath it lay a determined hope, a desperate prayer that King Solomon, renowned for his God-given wisdom, could somehow cut through the web of lies and grief to discern the truth. The fate of a living child, and the very essence of justice, now rested upon the shoulders of Israel's wisest monarch. Finally, they stood within the grand, imposing royal courtroom, a place of cedar and gold, a stark contrast to the shadowy room where their tragedy began. Before them sat King Solomon, regal and unyielding on his magnificent ivory throne, surrounded by his courtiers and advisers. The atmosphere was thick with awe and trepidation, the heavy silence broken only by the women's ragged breathing. Weary from their emotional ordeal and their journey, yet resolute in their desperate quest for justice, they awaited his judgment. The moment had arrived. The lives of two mothers and the fate of an innocent child now hung suspended, awaiting the discerning wisdom that only God could provide. The grand royal courtroom of King Solomon was a crucible of expectation. Adorned with cedar and gold, it usually buzzed with the affairs of state, but today a heavy silence permeated the air. Courtiers, advisers, and guards stood in solemn attention, their gazes fixed on the two distraught women and the living infant caught between their claims. The weight of an unprecedented and seemingly unsolvable case pressed upon the assembly. Solomon, seated upon his magnificent ivory throne, listened intently as the accusations and counter-accusations echoed through the chamber. His expression remained unreadable, a mask of profound contemplation, as every eye in the room sought an answer from the young king. How would the wisest king begin to untangle this impossible mystery? The very fabric of justice in Israel hung in the balance. Before uttering a single word, Solomon engaged in a silent, profound observation. His gaze, not merely human, but imbued with the divine insight he had so humbly requested from God, swept over the two women. He studied their posture, their trembling hands, the raw emotion etched on their faces. This was not a quick, superficial assessment, but a deep, discerning contemplation, seeking to understand the truth beyond the conflicting narratives. His wisdom, a direct gift from the Almighty, allowed him to perceive the hidden currents of the heart, the unspoken truths veiled by desperation and deceit. He sought not just facts, but the very essence of maternal love. While the court expected an immediate answer, Solomon saw beyond the words, into the hearts. His silence was a testament to the depth of his divine connection. Once given leave to speak, each woman presented her version of the night's tragic events. The first, her voice raw with grief and accusation, recounted the horror of waking to a dead child and the chilling realization of the swap. Her plea was passionate, her claims fervent, demanding the return of her living son. The second woman, equally vehement in her denials, maintained her innocence, insisting that the dead child belonged to the accuser and the living infant was unequivocally hers. Their arguments clashed with agonizing intensity, each claim mirroring the other in its conviction. Both women spoke with such emotional force that the court found itself hopelessly divided, unable to discern truth from falsehood. Two mothers, two stories, one baby. The court was divided. How could Solomon choose? As the testimonies concluded, a palpable sense of judicial impasse settled over the courtroom. The wisest advisers and most experienced judges of Israel shifted uneasily, for conventional legal methods offered no solution to this heart-wrenching dilemma. There were no witnesses to the night's dark exchange, no tangible evidence to corroborate either woman's claim. The truth was buried within the silent walls of their shared dwelling, concealed by desperation and deception. The tension mounted, a heavy weight of frustration and despair, as the court recognized its collective inability to render a just verdict. This was a riddle that defied human reason, an intellectual challenge that only an extraordinary wisdom could unravel. The wisest minds of Israel were stumped. Only Solomon's divine insight could break this deadlock. Then, a command that sent a ripple of shock and disbelief through the hushed assembly. Solomon's voice, calm yet resolute, cut through the tension. "Bring me a sword," he declared. A gasp swept through the courtroom, quickly followed by a stunned silence. What could this mean? A soldier, perhaps with a tremor of hesitation, stepped forward, drawing a polished blade from its sheath. The glint of steel caught the light, a stark and terrifying symbol. Solomon then delivered the unthinkable, a decree that seemed to defy all compassion and justice. Divide the living child in two, and give half to one and half to the other. 1 Kings chapter 3, verse 25. The words hung in the air, chilling and absolute. The court gasped. Solomon's solution was unthinkable. Divide the living child. This was no ordinary judgment. It was a test designed to expose the very soul. A wave of sheer terror washed over the onlookers. The soldier, now holding the gleaming sword, moved with a horrifying purpose towards the tiny, vulnerable infant. The child, perhaps sensing the shift in the atmosphere, let out a soft cry. Every eye in the courtroom was transfixed, every breath held. Was the king truly serious? Could such an atrocity be allowed in the hallowed halls of justice? The courtiers, the advisers, even the guards, stood frozen, their faces etched with horror and incredulity. The air grew thick with an unbearable tension, a life-or-death moment where the fate of an innocent hung precariously in the balance. This was not merely a threat. It was an imminent, terrifying possibility, poised to reveal the true heart of a mother, a moment of absolute terror. Would the king actually allow this atrocity? In that agonizing instant, the true mother's heart was ripped open. All thought of possession, all desire for vindication, vanished in the face of her child's imminent peril. Her deepest maternal instincts surged forth, overwhelming her with anguish. She cried out, her voice a desperate plea, "Oh, my Lord, give her the living child, and by no means kill him." 1 Kings chapter 3, verse 26a. Her hands stretched out in supplication, tears streaming down her face, her entire being focused on saving her son, even if it meant relinquishing him to the deceptive woman. This was the ultimate act of selfless love, a profound demonstration that true motherhood prioritized the child's life above all else, above ownership, above pride, above justice for herself. Her heart ripped open. One mother chose love over ownership, revealing the ultimate truth. The courtroom watched, stunned, as the second woman reacted with a chilling indifference. While the true mother wept and pleaded for the child's life, the false mother's response was cold, callous, and utterly devoid of genuine maternal affection. Her voice, calm amidst the terror, declared, "It shall be neither mine nor yours. Divide it." 1 Kings chapter 3, verse 26b. These words were a stark, horrifying contrast to the raw agony of the true mother. They betrayed a heart hardened by deceit and envy, a spirit willing to see an innocent life destroyed rather than concede it to another. Her lack of compassion, her vengeful agreement to the child's mutilation, stripped away any pretense of motherhood and exposed the depths of her deception. Her response was chilling. "Let neither of us have him." The depths of her deceit were exposed. In that dramatic revelation, the truth became instantly clear to Solomon. The stark contrast in the women's reactions was the irrefutable evidence his divine wisdom had sought. The true mother's selfless agony, her willingness to sacrifice her claim for her child's life, spoke volumes. The false mother's cold, vindictive assent to the child's death confirmed her deceit. Solomon's understanding heart to discern between good and evil, granted by God at Gibeon, now shone with unparalleled brilliance. This was not a judgment based on witnesses or legal precedents, but on the profound discernment of the human heart, revealing the authentic wellspring of maternal love. In their desperate words, Solomon found his answer. The true mother stood before him. With the truth unveiled, Solomon's voice rang out, clear and authoritative, dissolving the tension in the courtroom with a definitive verdict. Give the first woman the living child, and by no means kill him. She is his mother. 1 Kings chapter 3, verse 27. A collective sigh of relief swept through the court. Justice, profound and righteous, had been served. The living child was saved. reunited with the woman whose selfless love had proven her to be his true mother. Solomon's wisdom, a miraculous gift from God, had triumphed in an impossible situation, astounding all who witnessed it and solidifying his reputation as a king uniquely blessed with divine discernment. The child returned to its rightful mother. Solomon's wisdom had triumphed, astounding all who witnessed it. News of the judgment spread like wildfire across the land. From the bustling streets of Jerusalem to the quietest villages, the tale of the two mothers and the wise king echoed through every corner of Israel. The people, who had watched Solomon ascend the throne, now saw with their own eyes the manifestation of God's promise. A profound awe settled upon the nation, a deep respect for their young king, but more importantly, a recognition of the divine wisdom that resided within him. As recorded in 1 Kings chapter 3, verse 28, when all Israel heard the verdict the king had given, they stood in awe of him, for they saw that the wisdom of God was in him to administer justice. His authority was not merely inherited, but divinely confirmed, establishing a new era of righteous governance. From Jerusalem, the fame of Solomon's unparalleled wisdom began its journey across the ancient world. This single harrowing act of judgment became a foundational story, whispered in marketplaces and recounted in royal courts far beyond Israel's borders. It contributed to his burgeoning reputation as the wisest man who ever lived, a king whose discernment surpassed all others. Reports of his sagacity would eventually draw powerful monarchs, like the Queen of Sheba, to witness his extraordinary insight firsthand. This judgment was not just a resolution to a domestic dispute, it was a testament to God's favor, echoing a wisdom that transcended human understanding, a wisdom that would define a legacy. But what enduring lessons does it hold for us today? Beyond the dramatic climax, Solomon's judgment of the two mothers teaches us a profound truth about wisdom, love, and discerning the human heart. It reveals that true discernment often requires methods unconventional to human logic, methods that penetrate beyond presented facts to expose the underlying motives and affections. The power of selfless love, particularly a mother's sacrificial love, emerged as the ultimate revealer of truth. It demonstrated that genuine attachment prioritizes the well-being of the beloved above all else, even personal possession. This principle challenges us to look deeper, to seek the heart behind the words, and to recognize that true wisdom is often found in empathy and selflessness. Solomon's wisdom, a gift from God, was meant to serve justice and truth, bringing clarity where only confusion reigned. His legacy reminds us that divine insight can pierce through the darkest deceptions. How can we, in our own lives, cultivate such discernment? By seeking God's wisdom, prioritizing selfless love, and allowing our hearts to be guided by His truth in all our judgments. It's a timeless lesson for every one of us. If you found this story inspiring and eye-opening, please hit the like button, subscribe to our channel, and click the notification bell so you never miss an update.